Igbo bunu nda mamihe Igbole Igbo bunu nda mamihe Ebulanyelu Anamabara na ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konyo feke Anamabara no n'ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye feke Igbo bụ n'ndike ụmụ Igbo bụ n'ndike ụmụ Igbo bụ n'ndike ụmụ Igbo bụ n'ndike Koko nyamini Koko nyamini Koko nyamini Koko nyamini Hey cha Igbo kwazon yeah cha Igbo kwazon yeah Ihe ji mara ndị ihe bụ ọrụ aka ha Ihe ji mara ndị ihe bụ ihe aka ha Ihe ji mara ndị ihe bụ ọrụ aka ha Ndị anyị were omenala dowe n'azụ were omenala ndị ọzọ bulie elu Ndị anyị were omenala Igbo dowe n'azụ were omenala ndị ọzọ bulie elu Ihe anyị na-eme Chineke na ọ dịrọ ọzọ mma Ihe anyị na-eme Chineke ọ dịrọ mma Ihe anyị na-eme Good morning, Ndewo, and a happy new year to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first program of ChiismLive for 2023. I hope that everyone is doing well and that Chineke's blessings are already raining upon you. That is the greatest blessing that I can hope for you. For 2023, that Chineke is working with you, walking with you wherever you go this year. And as customary, before we even get started, let me just welcome you with the Okwanzu, the chalk. I don't know how many of you have the chalk, and we talk about it all the time. And this time when I just came back from Nigeria, I was able to get more chalk. As you can see, my charger has a little bit more chalk in it. So on behalf of Chiism, I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to dip my right middle finger and smear it on my left wrist, which means that you are welcome. We have individuals who have contacted me to let me know that they are not well, and I hope that they're going to be getting better. Like to welcome Akachi Azubike. Welcome, day one. No, Ibiala, Ukuna Charles, Ndewo, Ibiala, Unabiala ye, Onokawo. I know Ukuna was not doing very well, but he seems to be doing better now. And obviously, I just got better myself. I came back from Nigeria, and oh my God, I was so sick. The first 3 days were just awful. I didn't know what direction my health was going. But, you know, when God, Chineke, is in the mix, you always get well. So here I am. And I thank God for that. And I thank all of you that will join us today. And I'm quite excited because we've done something so exciting. And that is that we went home to lay our dear mother to rest. Noha Ngozi Onyoha. She has now been laid to rest near her husband, our dear father, Ahaike Oke Onyoha. And some of you had the opportunity. Ikuna Charles had the opportunity to be at the funeral. Thank you so very much for coming all the way from Port Harcourt to join us. And then we had individuals that came also from Maiduguri. Quite a number of women came to Maiduguri. And so we had a wonderful time. It's going to be a documentary. So we're not going to talk too much about it today, because one of our programs is going to be a documentary about her life and about what happened. So we're looking forward to doing that. So, but since this is we just want to, this is Gregorian, of course, New Year, but we just want to welcome everyone into 2023 with a prayer, so that we can we can thank Chineke for what happened in 2022, but ask for good tidings and good opportunities for 2023. I have to get used to saying 2023, because it seems like 23 just came right in there, and before we could finish 2022, it's already 2023. But anyway, please join me as I offer a prayer. And however you want to be, however you want to sit, if you want to stand up, if you want to have your hands up, your palm facing up, if you want to hold your hands together, if you want to close your eyes, if you want to look around, it's up to you how you want to receive the message this morning, the prayer this morning. But join me, however, as we thank Chineke. Chineke okekere abasi dị n'elu, Chukwu obiọma, Olodumare tamona jinya meka tonda nyemi nkosi, uvuzilele, obasikenyo, obangiji. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity that you've given us again. And we wish to thank you for the perfect peace that we know that you will offer us this year. Thank you for allowing us to climb the mountains, swim across the streams and the ocean waves of our mind and reality that we may have faced in 2022. Thank you for allowing us to overcome all of our challenges to the degree that we're able to be here in 2023. Thank you, Chineke, for letting us see the sunrise and the sunsets, to hear the babies' coos, the puppies' cuddles, the cozy blankets, the cups of tea, coffee, and hot chocolate, the cold and the warmth that we experienced in 2022. We ask for more such tidings in 2023. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to lay our mother Noha to rest in the most celebratory way, the best we can. We did it, thought we couldn't do it, but we did it anyway. We pumped up the volume for her. Thank you for giving us the wherewithal to do as much as we can to give her dignity in rest. We want you to bless everyone who came and celebrated her life with us in however form they chose. Those in spirit, those who chose to be present, those who gave money, those who just gave us well wishes. Thank you for all that they gave to us spiritually to calm our sobs and give our mother a sweet farewell. Chineke, you are always our source of peace in different ways. We ask you to extend your best offering this year, 2023. Give us the amazing gift of lasting peace to carry with us through, not just situations that we may face today, but all the stresses of tomorrow. Chineke, we know that the world cannot give us the peace that you can. No circumstances are strong enough to take away the peace you're going to give us. As long as you're by our side, we walk in holy boldness. Chineke, we ask for perfect harmony, joy, and love, and ask you to cleanse us from any misadventures and set our feet on solid ground in 2023. We are grateful for all that you have done thus far. And we are overwhelmingly grateful for the more overpowering serenity that we know that you would give and add to our lives this year. Ụbọchị anyị niile Chineke bụrụ ihe. Anyị na-arịọ gị ka ihe ọbụla anyị kpatụrụ aka ka ka ọ bụrụ nnọọsọ mma mma ka ụwa niile si n'aka anyị were hụ ihe site ugbu a ruo mgbe niile ebighị ebi ise ọfọ ashe, and so it is. Thank you, Chineke, for life. Thank you. We are so grateful. I'm so grateful for all of you. I'm grateful that you are all still inhaling and exhaling. I'm excited about the topic of discussion today, which is, it's quite important. And I thank Akachi Azubike for this discussion today. It is very important, and I'm so glad that it was raised because, you know, there are some times that we as a people would pick a subject and we talk about it, but not always in the way that benefits us, but sometimes in the way that benefits those who doubt who we are, who doubt our greatness, who would like to dampen our spirit and convince us of things that are not real, of information that are not real, that keep the mess going, if I may use that expression. Sometimes people mean well, but if you don't do your research, if you don't really pay attention to history, you say things that don't really matter, things that are not really true. So today, I am so glad that we have the Dibias who are going to work with us today, participate today. Dibia Yudi Onyoha, as always. Dibia Dewo.
Carl,
welcome.
Glad to be back to the United States after visiting the motherland and putting Noha in the ground. Beautiful tomb. The high point of my life.
Yes.
You know, putting Daddy, our father, you know, giving him a befitting funeral burial was great. But this here seems to be more satisfying, not just for the fact that we did it, but for the fact that they're now together.
Yes.
Forever.
Yes.
In the spirit world. Yes. With the ancestors. Yes. Now, when I get to Nkporo, it's almost like having a pilgrimage to where it all began. And I could walk in there, open the doors, and I get to look at the Noha, and I get to look at Ahai, and I get to just embellish this great tradition in the Onyoha family and embellish the fight that both of them dedicated themselves to till they passed away in trying to redefine civilization and give the Black man and Black woman pride in who they are, in our contributions to civilized behavior. I'm very proud of you. I'm proud of Ichie. I'm proud of Adoha. And I'm proud of myself. We did a bloody good job. And I thank Chineke for it all.
Thank you. And we have was trending as Avatar, you know, her homegoing. All those who participated are using, I was there as their avatar, and we are grateful for it. We are truly grateful for it. That the two individuals, Chifiken Nausimiri was supposed to join us, but he is having such difficulty with the audio of his phone. So he's struggling with that. And I have not been able to get in touch with Dibia Chiedozie since the vacation. Obviously, he's still he's still vacationing. And also Dr. Simona is supposed to be here today. So hopefully she's going to join us. But in the meantime, we're going to tackle a subject today that I think is a very interesting subject. You know, when somebody talks about a superior religion, then it's imperative that we describe it. You have to describe what superiority means. And the topic of conversation today is Egyptian spirituality. Is it the purest African spirituality? This was a question that was raised by to Akachi Azubike, and she thought it was important that we have this conversation, and I agree with her. I think we should. So I want to start by asking a question. What is superiority in the first place in the religion? What is the definition of superiority? For those who think that any one particular religion, no matter where it comes from, I don't care if it comes from North Africa, East, West Africa, what is that definition of superiority? Religion is typically a way of worshiping a Holy Spirit in whatever form the people who are giving supplication present, however they present it. Okay, so then the question of superiority is it based on what? Which way of giving supplication is superior to the other? Is it based on the fact that the deity being worshipped is greater than any other deity? Or, you know, some people call it deity, some people call it give it Holy Spirit. What is superior there? Which one? Is it the name we call the Holy Spirit, or what we identify as Holy Spirit? Is it the name that we ascribe to it? When you define superiority, then you have to be able to say why you define it. You can't just say because it started at a certain time, then that's superior. You know, what are you comparing it to? What is your concept? What is your definition of superiority? Compared to what? Is it superiority in the gods that you're talking about? Because everybody has their concept of God. Is your superior because the God, that what you call your God or who you identify God, is superior to who other people identify as God? What is your basis for saying that your religion, any religion, is superior? Or is it the effectiveness of your God, if you want to call it God or whatever the name is? On what grounds are you basing your definition of superiority? Is it that a particular belief system is superior to another belief system? Is it how people worship? Is that what's superior? What is your definition of superiority? Is it how strong the faith is? Is that what makes it superior to the other? If your faith is stronger, does it mean that someone else's faith is less strong? Is it because maybe your religion is a recorded religion? Is that it? Because let's understand that all religions started as oral religion. They all started as oral. Is it because the Europeans have seen to grab onto Egyptian spirituality, and because it's written, then those traditions that use oral spirituality to record their spirituality, is that what makes it inferior? Is oral spirituality, is that inferior? On what basis are we talking about superiority of Egyptian religion? Is it the power of the data they collected, or the number of data they've collected, or the organization of their data? What makes it superior? Every religion is organized, so I don't understand the statement. In spirituality, you don't have a superior one, because in the final analysis, this is important for those who believe that, it is about a belief system of a people. In any case, it's important to remember that from the Nile, civilization began in Ethiopia. Much of what Egypt has came from other parts of Africa. It's a collection of other spiritual ways of life. So it just didn't spring from Egypt. It came from different parts of Africa. And actually, as a matter of fact, the hub, the basin of Africa, Western Africa, the Southern Africa, all those parts, all the collection of all those spiritual way of life was taken all over the world. That's why most religions have similar principles, even though there may be some diversity here and there. But it's because it is a source, that is a source fountain that just spread everywhere. So it's understanding history is important before you start making the claim that any one particular religion is superior. You must understand what spirituality is in the first place before you claim superiority. We in Chiism, we don't claim absolute truth. We don't claim superiority. We simply say that people should respect and honor the traditions of their ancestors as just as relevant as anyone else. So when we talk about African spirituality, that Egyptian spirituality is superior, we got to be very careful. We must be able to define spirituality. Otherwise, we're making a statement that undermines the relevance of other people's existence. Whereas I do believe that the Egyptian spirituality, certainly, there's so much of it that's superior to something else within their own culture. Maybe the way some Egyptians practiced it may be superior to the way some other Egyptians practiced it. And then when I talk about superiority, perhaps we're talking about how organized they were. But that's within that culture. But you can't say all over the world, all over Africa, that only Egyptians' religion is superior. You must be able to define what superiority means. Yudi, your thoughts?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. But this is a deep conversation. First, I want to thank Akachi for bringing this up, because it's a conversation that needs to be had. And sometimes you have to deal with who's telling the story, where the story is coming from, and what's the intention behind the story being told. And you shouldn't be so dismissive of oral history, right? Because that was the first form of transmitting information before, written scripts came about. In any form, from every civilization in the world, it was oratory, it was oral before written text. So when you're making these definitions of the oldest religion, blah, 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 you have to also have what I call, you have to show distinction between religion and spirituality, right? We have to understand that. We're going to school now, okay? Religion in its etymology is a realization by a human that they are not responsible for life-sustaining forces. You have to agree with me, this realization is more than 10,000 years old. It's more than 20,000 years old. It's more than 100,000 years old. As a matter of fact, human migration started 270,000 years ago from Central Africa, all the way to the north, to the east, the Orient, to Australia, and to the west. Also, don't forget that at some point, we only had one land form before, seismic tremors or situations, created the continents. But anyway, getting back to the subject. Human migration started 270,000 years ago. So let's just assume, let's go back 30, 40,000 years ago. We do understand that in Africa, 35,000 years ago, the first mathematical formula ever created was from South Central Africa, called the Lebombo bones, where they were etching distance calculation on the bones of baboons. That's older than Kemetic civilization. It's older than Ethiopia, which, by the way, Ethiopia is older than Kemet. And a lot of influences in Kemet came from Ethiopia. You have all the cultures like the Nok culture. So who writes this story? And when you talk about religion, in terms of how it influences human behavior and control, who is annexing whose history sometimes? Because you got to understand, a lot of the European theology or Christian history came from borrowings from Kemet, from Egyptian spirituality. The idea of Osiris and Horus and Isis, those names are European, they're not Egyptian. The actual people that those names refer to are Asa, Aset, and Heru. Then, of course, maybe some misinterpretation of the names, whatever the case may be, the Europeans came up with the names of Osiris, Isis, Horus, and what have you. Then let's talk about the oldest religion in the world. Now, when you talk about the oldest religion in the world, are you talking about the oldest religion in the world based on written texts? Or is it based on oral tradition? Because based on written text, Zoroastrianism is the oldest organized religion. First, you have your personal religion, which is a realization that you are not responsible for the life-sustaining forces, the air you breathe, the rivers, the fish in the rivers, the land, the animals that you eat. Once you ascribe the creation of these things to something greater than yourself, religion becomes automatic in you. That is the etymology of religion. Spirituality is different. It is how you live your life to accommodate this realization that you have. Being good to your neighbor, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not lie. That's spiritual practice, not religion. That's what it is. Zoroastrianism is the oldest organized religion, and as a matter of fact, a lot of Christian beliefs like heaven and hell came from Zoroastrianism, founded by Zarathustra. Now, let's talk about polytheism and monotheism. Religions in the world practice either or, monotheistic or polytheistic, or polytheism. Polytheism is dual, right? Worship of several gods or what have you. While mono is belief in one God. In Christianity, they believe in one God. In Islam, they believe in one God. And even in Judaism, they believe in one God. Abrahamic religions believe in that. But at the same time, Islam and Christianism have a middleman, Jesus and Muhammad, where direct worship to direct relationship with God is not possible if you're a Christian or if you're a Muslim. You have to defer to Christ or Muhammad for your salvation and for you to have a link or a line to God to ask for favors or for forgiveness, whatever your needs or spiritual needs or physical needs might be. Polytheism is belief in one God. And a lot of religions believe in one God. Now, you have several deities and all that, because in spiritual practices, we seem to create compartments when it comes to God. Even in Christianism, even though they claim belief in one God, but God does not stand on its own. You need the Father and the Son to make up the Godhead. In African spirituality, the Godhead, the compartmentalization of the ontology is Anyanwu. Then you have Kamalo, you have Ofonogu, you have Ane, you have Ekuroche, you have Imomiri, you have the ancestors at the bottom, so on and so forth. All make up the Godhead. In Hindu religion, it's the same thing. There's really in paganism, right, which is the pagan culture, Zeus, they're all the demigods or deities, you know, Aphrodite, Zeus, Titan, and what have you. In Norse culture, you have Odin, you have Thor, you have all that. No one God in any religion exists in a vacuum. There are deities that surround this Godhead to make up the whole. Nsibidi is an ancient Igbo writing. Cameroon, Ibibio, Igbo, they are symbols of communication, and they are over 4,000 years old. What I want the audience to keep in mind is simply this. A lot of the theologies or a lot of the scripts that exist today in terms of religion are those that survived. That those that survived colonization, like Hinduism or Buddhism in China or Shintoism in Japan. In Africa, most of the scripts, like in Sibidi, were destroyed. In Abreba, we have pyramids over there called Nsude pyramids. They were destroyed when Africa was colonized or when Nigeria was colonized by the British. So a lot of religious documentation or scripts that are out there are those that survived colonization or survived imperialism or survived the idea that you have to destroy the indigenous culture and supplant it with yours. If human civilization, if the Lubumba bones that are over 35,000 years old, the first recorded scripting of distance calculation, if it is 1,000 years old and it came from Central Africa, and we know that the Nsibidi scripts and maybe some other ancient scripts in Africa that because of colonization were wiped out, we really do not know and cannot assume that the oldest religion in the world is Kemetic, considering the fact that human migration started in Central Africa over 270,000 years ago. Nobody can tell me, as UD Onyoha, that humans had no spirituality or religion till they ended up in Egypt. Nobody can tell me that we did not have any spirituality or religion till Zarathustra came about. The difference between the etymology of religion and organized religions, whose sole purpose is controlling behavior and controlling your purse and power infused with politics. That's what it's really all about. It's not about which God is better than that God. Allah, Olodumare, Ubangiji, Nkulunkulu, Jiami, Uvuzulele, Jehovah, Allah, all of them are names for one God. We all don't speak the same languages, or the same language, so we cannot expect to call or refer to the Creator by one single name. The Igbo man does not speak Arabic, so if you ask me what's God's name in my language, I'm going to say it's Chineke or chukwu. I'm not going to say Allah. I don't speak Arabic. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to say Jehovah. It has nothing to do with me. If I'm Yoruba, it is Olodumare. I'm not going to say Igbo. I'm not Igbo. But the bottom line is we all refer to the same Creator. If you have to now decide that religion has authenticity or is genuine only when it's written down, then you are out of your mind, because you are not considering oral history, which was the first way of transmitting information before scripts were written. So if we're basing oldest religions based on scripts that are written, then that is wrong academic way of looking at things. You must first think about the oral traditions that existed in all cultures. And if humanity started in Africa 270,000 years ago, then I am confident in my summation that religion, as we know it, started in ancient sub-Saharan Africa before Ethiopia and before Egypt. And if you think I'm wrong, prove it.
Well. You see, this is a heavy conversation. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I'm going to bring Dibias Simiri. He is just can't wait to get into this conversation. Great points. So I'm going to take you just did. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to bring him in. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Chief.
Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to come into this discussion, and I want to approach this discussion in a little bit different manner. I understand that there's someone that feels that one aspect of history regarding Kemetic culture is purer than some of the traditional religions of Africa as they are currently being practiced to in their cultural environment presently. And I would like to let me share a little story with you. More than 40 years ago, as a student at Wayne State University, I spent as much time in the general library on campus as I did in the science library. And I pulled a book off the shelf that dealt with Igbo language. And I was quite fascinated by the fact that this textbook or this book showed a number of Igbo pictograms. And I would equate that with, let's say that's like a Hebrew, like an Igbo hieroglyphic writing. So I brought this book back. At that time, I was not married. I was dating my wife, who's Igbo. And I asked her, had she ever seen any of this? And she said, no. And there was some writings. I asked her, can you read this? And she said, no. So I share that story with you to get back into the crux of my discussion, is that when we speak of African Kemetic Egypt, we have to understand that during the pre-Ptolemaic times, where Ptolemy as a non-African came into Egypt and took a lot of credit for what Africa had produced as a collective, that Egypt served as the boil. Like in your body, you have a lymph node system. And every now and then, you will get to a stage where those lymph nodes have to empty the waste, the excess waste out of the body. And sometimes what happens is that in order to do that, while your body functions in many ways to do that, in order to do that, sometimes what happens is that you will get what's called as a boil or an eruption. And if you burst that boil, you get waste out of that boil. Well, the reason why I'm drawing this comparison is that we have to understand that what happened in Egypt during the Pharaonic times is the result of a collective of inflow of information and cultural streaming that came into Africa during that time from Western Africa, Northern Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And all of those Black African cultures found a way of contributing to what came out of Egypt, what showed up as ancient Kemetic Egypt. Now, if you've studied, and we want to make a very careful analysis of what we're talking about here, because there are many who are reading these things, but have done little further study as to what they are reading and have a basic understanding about what they are reading. Dr. Theophile Obenge, who studies ancient African cultures and has studied ancient African Kemetic culture, relates to us that, first of all, Dr. Obenge, he's a linguist. He studies linguistic aspects of African and of cultures, of ancient cultures. And he has an article, he has a treatise that's you can find if you can find the book. It's called African Intellectual Heritage, a book of sources. This book right here. And in this book here, you find his article. And it talks about the genetic linguistic connections of ancient Egypt and the rest of Africa. And it is a very detailed work to be so short, but in basic truth, what he's discussing is the fact that there are certain cultures which claim certain languages, and there are certain cultures which you have language similarities that are of African origin. And in the African study, you will find that cultures, as different cultures, have contributed to the language of ancient Kemetic Egypt. There are words that are found in ancient Egypt that are found in other African cultures. Okay? And while this article is very detailed, I'll just give you an example of one. In one of the words that's found in ancient Egypt is ka, K-A. It's also found and spoken today in Nigeria. Part of the language, of the spoken language of Nigeria, is ka. In Chad, the word ka exists. In the Fang or Gabon, the word ka exists, K-A. In the Congo, ka exists, K-A. In Mali, ka exists, K-A, spelled the same way. In Senegal, in Guinea-Bissau, it's, I'm not going to do it right, Justice, but I'll try. It's Iaka. So these variations of language are present in, and some of them are identical. You find these linguistic similarities in many African cultures, which means that they were not necessarily borrowed. These were not borrowed from another culture outside of African culture. These are language aspects that exist and have genetic ties with each other in African culture. Okay? So when you look at that, you understand that these are things that flowed into Egypt. The conditions that were in Egypt were ripe for Egypt to develop these concepts and produce what you see in Egypt as outstanding culture, as outstanding African culture. And, you know, excellence does not happen on its own. Excellence happens as a result of contributions that have been combined and picked up from constant sources of renewal. And those constant sources of renewal flowed from different areas of geographical areas of Africa into Egypt. So the good thing about that is that it gave us something that provided some permanence. These structures and these things still stand. And we should not look at it as somebody trying to say that I'm better than my African brothers and sisters. We should look at that as the result of the inflows and the ability to have things preserved, because there are many things that were not preserved in many African cultures. As Judy has said, oral tradition is very, very important. And this oral tradition existed back then, and it still exists now. But in many cultures, because of the environmental pressures and pressures that came from outside, things were not allowed to develop as they should. They were not allowed to be preserved in writing as they should. And many things that might have been preserved have been destroyed, either through natural or unnatural events. So just because you don't see certain things in one African culture, you don't see them like you see them in ancient Egypt, doesn't mean that those things did not exist at some point in time. And neither does it deny the fact that those important aspects in information did not exist, period. It just means that there are certain conditions that are more conducive to preserving certain things. And fortunately, what we have in African Kemetic culture was the ability of the African to preserve and demonstrate in everything that was left there. But you cannot say that what happened in the Congo is inferior to what happened in Kemetic Egypt, because part of what happened in the Congo was transmitted to Kemetic Egypt. Okay, so we need to not look at what happened in Egypt as superior, but what we need to look at it as an aspect of that. What happened was that, you know, if I've got $25,000 or $25 million, I may not want to carry that to the bank. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find somebody that is capable of carrying that to the bank, and I'm going to take and entrust them after I know them to do that function for me. So we need to look at this in a different way. Now, I have one more very, very, very important aspect to discuss about this that buttresses this argument. Dr. Ivan Sertima was known primarily for what happened when he wrote They Came Before Columbus. But Dr. Sertima also wrote a series of booklets where he talked about individually the African presence in early Europe, the African presence in early America, and the African presence in Egypt. And in that book that Dr. Sertima provides on the African presence, the early African presence in Egypt, what he does is that not only does he talk about artifacts, but he also shows you pictures of hairstyles that exist in some of those cultures, especially in the village areas with many cultures. The way the hair was worn, the way the outline of the hair was cut. And then he shows you artifacts of helmets, of hairdresses, of headgear that mimic those hairstyles in the same shape and form that are found throughout ancient African Egyptian culture. That means that the transmission of culture in certain important aspects of African culture, that if you find those very same things that you would have found in the village in Nigeria or wherever else in the Congo, you find those same things in African Egypt. You find the same hairstyles being worn in African Egypt as you would find in Western Africa or Southern Africa. You find the notation was made also about the Olmec heads. The carvings of the Olmec heads show headgear that was found in Africa. So again, we have this transmission coming from different areas of Africa, contributing to the growth and development of ancient Kemetic Egypt. So it's very important that we understand what we're talking about and that we keep our discussions in proper perspective, because the documentation, whether it's being written, whether it's oral, or whether it's you find it in the statuary, if it was in another place and you find it in ancient Africa, then that should tell you something. That's a clear indication that this thing didn't happen on its own. It occurred because of an influx of cultures coming from other different area parts of Egypt. So I think before you make a claim, you need to bring some receipts. And we have people who have studied. And when you get into the languages, because I asked my wife, I says, I says, you use this word in Igbo? And she said, yeah. And as I'm looking at it here in, not only in Egypt, but I'm looking at it here from this place and from this place and from this place. These languages were related in some way. They have a genetic linkage because it's part of the development of African development that was being interacting and imposed through natural means throughout Black Africa. And we need to keep that in mind. It's very important to understand that. Thank you for this time.
Great points, Chief. Absolutely marvelous. I couldn't have put it any better myself. Some of the points that Chief Ikenna was making, brought us on what we call cross-cultural pollination, right? It's called cross-cultural pollinations, where cultures borrow from other cultures, take what is relevant, jettison what is not, take what it is that they can use, and create a culture of their own. That is human history. That is the genesis of humanity. That's just the way it works. Closed societies are evil and conservative. They don't let anything to come in. And because they're closed, they're almost always underdeveloped and primitive. Having open societies, which is the way it's always worked in ancient history, regardless of where you are in the world, they've always been centers for business, for communication, for studies, schooling, all over the world, from the Mayan, civilization to Rome, to China, to Japan, Tokyo, to Timbuktu in Africa, and even older than that. I'm just giving you a few examples. The idea of cross-cultural pollination is to grow, to bring things in that will help you. And those things that are archaic and no longer serve any purpose in solving your problem, both as individuals and as a society, you get rid of it. The world is about cross-cultural pollination. And Dr. O had made a point. I was reading the comment over here, and it says, documentation does not render oral rendering inferior. Written documentation is sourced from oral history and from the human mind. It started in the mind before it came out of your mouth, before you transmitted it to your arm, before you started to write it or inscribe it using symbols. That's how it works for every society. As I mentioned earlier, we had Nsibidi. It's over 4,000 years old. And I am very positive that there are other scripts in ancient sub-Saharan Africa that are even older than that. We just don't know it. It's all about discovery. And it's all about your mindset when you're doing research regarding your humble beginnings and your contributions to civilized behavior. The problem that I see and the tragedy of this great awakening that some of us as Africans or African Americans have is that we seem to imbibe somebody else's history and then claim it to be ours. Somebody a long time ago, we were having a conversation and they were telling me about African, Kemetic history and how it's the most palatable history in the world. I said, listen, first of all, Kemetic history is being, colonized by the European, and also trying to claim that Kemetic history is actually based on the European influence by trying to get rid of some hieroglyphic writings in the pyramids, and the evidence is there where people are trying to chisel away all the inscriptions, the cutting off of the nose of the Sphinx, right? Because he had African features and they didn't want that. As Chief Ikenna had mentioned earlier on, some of the hairstyles and some of the languages in Egypt is Nubian. The black people. Kemet actually means land of the black folks. Mm-hmm. Instead of Europeans accepting that, they say it's land of the black, is it a Black Sea or something like that, as opposed to land of black folks. The important thing here, people, is to understand that oral history came before written history. Mm-hmm. And if we believe in human migration patterns 270 million years ago, then it's almost stupid to assume that Africans had no knowledge of the Creator, that we had no spirituality, that religion in its etymology was not something that we understood before we ended up in Egypt or ended up in Rome or written by Greeks. Right? A big example of cross-cultural pollination and people trying to colonize history is, again, when you talk about Horus and you talk about Isis and you talk about Osiris, you're really talking about Asa, Aset, and Heru. That is the actual Kemetic word for those names. Osiris is Greek. You understand? Osiris is Greek. Isis is Greek. Horus is Greek. It is not Kemetic language. Kemetic language for those three entities is Asa, Aset, and Heru. African spirituality, as far as I'm concerned, is older. And I didn't say religion. I said spirituality. There's a difference. Institutionalized religion is one of those things that bastardize our understanding of the Creator. When you talk about Christianism, Islam, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, Buddhism, all the isms that are just philosophies designed to help humans walk through or into the mystery of God, of Chineke, of the Creator in many languages. Christianism does not mean religion. It is a philosophy. Yes. Buddhism does not mean religion. It is a religious philosophy. Religion in its etymology is just the attributing the power of creation to something greater than yourself, because you're not responsible for these life-sustaining forces. Religion becomes automatic in you. The philosophies that develop through this realization and through human spirituality is what the ISM-ism is about. Philosophy designed to control your behavior, designed to increase the purse of the religious authority that is governing over you. And by the way, it's also involved in politics. Politics make, how do you say, strange bedfellows, but they go hand in hand, because both of them have the same objective: control of the population and increase of the purse. In religion, in Christianism, in any other religion, it's either through sacrifice or through paying some kind of tithe. In politics, it's called taxes. It's one and the same. Religion taxes you for your soul to have a relationship with your Creator, and politics taxes you for your money so that they could do what governments do: make your life better and also defend the population. So to make a long story short, and I'm sure we're going to get Dr. Ajamu to come in and give us a tidbit on this topic. Just understand that the idea that Kemetic religion or any other religion is older than African spirituality or the etymology of religion itself is false. Think deep, have unkomi, understand the relevance and importance of oral history. If you understand that, then you will be able to understand the idea that the word ka can be found in Egypt.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to get Dr. Monet's impression about what we're talking about today.
Yes, I would first like to thank Chineke for bringing forth the message, and also you, Your Excellency, and my spiritual fathers for bringing forth such great knowledge today. And I also would like to thank the ancestors. And how I look at this is there is always, we have to look, when we're looking at spirituality, we're looking at Chineke and all of the wonderful things that Chineke relays to us and how that is relayed. We have to understand that things are incorporated, things are taken out. And in African American spirituality, there are many things that had been added to what we feel is Christianity without even knowing that it is a part of our African spirituality, or it has been secret. In African traditions, things have been secret. You know, spirituality has been a secret, and that's because of protecting ourselves, our ancestors. I know my ancestors protecting themselves because, you know, there was a time that you could be killed for doing African spirituality or African practices, and they knew that. So, you know, in generations, you know, after that, a lot of that has been lost. And so what a lot of people think is Christianity, or, you know, certain practices that they have is something different. It is really not. It's rooted in African spirituality, African practices. But because we've been so far removed and that has not been explained by our ancestors, we are not aware this is African spirituality, just simply not having the knowledge. So we have to educate ourselves. More of us, especially in the diaspora, need to come on to platforms like this to understand where our spirituality is rooted from. And we must understand that. And so even looking, when we're talking about Kemet, when we're talking about the Egyptian spirituality and things like that, we must understand that that was not where it started. We must look deeper and gain more knowledge. Just like Uncle Yudi was saying, or, you know, we must gain more knowledge and go further into our studies of these things. Don't just jump into that. We think in a religious way of, okay, someone tells us something about spirituality that we understand, or a religion that we're attracted to, and we just listen to what they have to say, but we don't do our own searching, our own, and gaining our own knowledge and looking deeper, thinking more critically as to what this is and where it may have come from. So we must do that. You know, we must make sure that we are knowing what we are believing. We must understand and know what we're believing. But really, really and truly, where we get to a higher level of spirituality is the higher connection, the deeper connection with Chineke. And that's going to Chineke and getting closer and gaining our own, growing in our own spirituality, opposed to just following a religion.
Yes, I love that. Developing our spirituality. I think that we're making a mistake. You know, if we're it's almost like we're parroting what the Europeans have said about our own inferiority, as this inferiority of our spirituality. Now, this is the one they've held up high, right? So Kemetic spirituality is superior. Everything else is inferior. As a matter of fact, that was the comment that was made. Anything outside of the Kemetic spirituality is inferior. Okay, so you have to ask yourself: do all Africans come from northern Africa?
No.
No. What happened to the southern, the eastern, the western? So we're insignificant. That means our spirituality is not worthy of discussion. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Yes, Chief Ikenna?
I'd like to make a comment when you get done, or if it's okay to come in.
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I think the mistake we're making here is, you know, for many, many years before I became knowledgeable, I didn't look upon, you know, what was present in Egypt as very much. But after studying, it became very apparent to me that the Europeans know what that represents. And I think the mistake that we make is that we need to embrace and further research and study that to bring it forward so that we as Africans, people of African descent, are more aware of what that demonstrates, number one. But then secondly, what we need to be able to do, because the many Africans on the continent have really been distressed from their own culture. I mean, nobody makes a better example of that than I need some help here. Destruction of African civilization. Dr. I'm having brain freeze. Help me.
What's his name? Henry Clark?
No.
No.
He wrote Destruction of Black Civilization.
I can't.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But in his text, he clearly demonstrates many of the aspects of what happened to Africa from outside intrusion, from environmental situations that happen, and things that happen. So one of the things that we're not doing is that we should be in an effort to connect with our brothers and sisters on the continent in those areas to help them understand what they have contributed, and also help them to start asking questions in their own cultural society to discover what is really part of their African traditional religious heritage, and then getting them associated back with, you see what you did? You don't have that over here. And you're being assaulted by foreign religions, by all these other different religions coming into your culture, telling you, first of all, that you don't have anything, and what you're doing you have is inferior. But you can't tell me that what I have is inferior, because look at what I have, look what I contributed to producing over here. So see, we're not getting back to those people, because a lot of Africans won't even teach. A lot of Africans in the continent will not even teach their kids to speak their own language in the household.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if I won't teach you to speak my language, then you expect I'm going to teach you about your African cultural tradition religions? I mean, we got to make it, there's a disconnect there, and we got to look at these disconnections. I mean,
what you're saying, the argument, perfect, Chief Ikenna. The argument that we need to stress, what we're challenging here is the notion. It's not that Egyptian spirituality is not noble. It's not that it's not important. It's not that it's not effective. It's not that it's not it's not grand. That is not our argument. And you're right, Chief Ikenna, we should promote that as well. But what we're saying, and I want us all to, each individual one of us to kind of emphasize on the fact that other African spirituality is not inferior. This is really what has happened through the years. This is what has been portrayed about African spirituality. We select the one that we can bastardize, if I use that expression, and then the rest of them we just want to throw them out with the dirty bathwater. They're not good enough. They are, because it comes from people who don't look like the images that the Europeans have established for North Africa, for Egypt. Queen of Sheba now is white looking. Everybody from the Nile, everybody from Egypt is now white looking. Half of them don't look like you and I. So those who look more like what they think, the spiritual, the intelligent, and those people they have selected to reflect what they consider to be intelligent. Okay, that's what's superior. And then those that look like you and I are not superior. We know it's not true. But so those individuals who have adopted the whole notion that Egyptian mythology, because when all is said and done, it's all mythology. That's all it is. Absolutely. You're talking about Egyptian mythology as better mythology than everyone else's mythology. No, we can't do that. Us African people, we can't add to our own inferiority complex, by accepting that any aspect of who we are is inferior. And that's what Chiism is about. We always want to remind you that the way of your ancestors is noble. Well, understand? The ways of your ancestors is as good as anybody else. Don't look down upon yourself because some people don't understand you or don't want to understand you. And so you are out here, and this is what's happening to a lot of the Igbo people, right? First, they went through Christianity. That didn't work for a lot of them. So they left that one. Now they're going into Judaism. Okay, for some of them have come out, and I was reading an article, somebody who was, speaking ill, and I don't advocate that you speak ill of any religion. However, they're not satisfied with Judaism. So now they're doing Buddhism. Okay, so everything but African spirituality. We're going to run the gamut. We're going to go here and here and here, but we just don't want to embrace our own. For some reason, we've been convinced that African spirituality is inferior, and the more and more they say that to us and we embrace it, the more we start believing it, and they promote that. You see, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 points, or talk about this subject by bringing in 2 points. First of all, about Kemetic religion. Egypt, Kemet, is close to Greece. It's close to Europe. And when I say Europe, I'm not talking about England and France. I'm talking about Italy, right? Egypt was prime real estate for the Roman Empire and for Alexander the Great. So those two civilizations, because of their interest in Egypt, also helped to promote the Egyptian history that we know today because of their influence.
Yes.
Now, we don't talk a lot about Carthage. That was a civilization on its own after Kemet, of course, because Carthage was plundered and erased from the surface of the earth by a concise plan by Scipio Africanus and the Emperor of Rome at that time to make sure that nothing about Carthage exists. They burned the city down, destroyed it, enslaved every citizen, and those citizens that they couldn't take to Rome, they murdered all of them. So what you know about Kemet right now is because of Egypt, Alexander the Great, and Saladin. That's why you know about Egypt right now. And of course, that particular history, because of how astute it was, because of the incredible pyramids that the European, as of today, can't figure out how it was constructed. So they even took the credibility of the construction of the pyramids from the Egyptians and now decided that ancient aliens may have built it.
There you go. There you go. You just can't get that credit.
Now, that's one thing. That's one point I wanted to make. Now, here's the second point. Now, this is going to deal with spirituality. I've already discussed the etymology of religion, which means a realization that you're not responsible for the life-sustaining forces. You credit that to something greater than yourself, and that something is the Almighty Creator in many languages. Religion became automatic in man and woman. That's the meaning of religion. Buddhism and all that stuff are philosophies. That's one point. Now, here's the second point. Thou shalt not lie. Let's assume, and we know, we're not even assuming that human civilization started in sub-Saharan Africa and spread all over the world. And that the first written inscription is the Lebombo bones that we know, as far as math is concerned and calculation of distances. As far as scripted is concerned, the Lebombo bones is older than any other script that I know of now. It's older than the hieroglyphics in Egypt. It's older than the writings in the caves of the Australian Aborigines that is over 10,000 years old. The Lebombo bone and the Ishaka bones are older than that. Thou shalt not lie is not a European religion, Christian, Islamic, or does not belong to any religion in this world, because there is no culture that says that it's okay to lie. So if human migration started from Africa, that commandment of thou shalt not lie came from Africa. That is the first level of human spirituality. Thou shalt not kill. Even though you do, depending on the situation. But these commandments were designed to control your human behavior so that we are not just going around doing whatever we like, taking somebody's wife, property, or whatever it is that we want to do. Thou shalt not commit adultery is not a Christian thing. There's no culture in the world that says it's okay to commit adultery, it's okay to lie, it's okay to kill, it's okay to covet your neighbor's wife, it's okay for you to disrespect your elders. There's no culture that says that. That is as old as Africa is. That is the first level of spirituality. And I'm not talking about religion. So for those of us that suddenly we are woke and we now imbibe and embrace Egyptian religion and culture over sub-Saharan African culture, my question to you is, how many people from Egypt went through the Middle Passage?
Thank you. Say it again.
To the United States, to Argentina, to Chile, to the Bahamas, right? To
how many
Haiti,
slaves
to
came
Jamaica,
from Egypt to America?
How many of them were enslaved from Egypt and brought to the Americans? All of them came from sub-Saharan Africa, and most of them came from West Africa.
Yes.
Minus a little bit of Kenyans, Ugandans, Congolese, South Africans, Angolans. But a lot of them came from Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Dahomey, Sierra Leone, Senegal, all of that. So you're over here as a woke African or woke Jamaican or woke whatever in the world you think you are. Think about that, right? No Egyptian was enslaved. There were hardly any Ethiopian people that were enslaved here in the Americas. Maybe somewhere in Europe they did. I mean, slavery in Europe, the Berber slaves, Europeans were actually enslaved. The Turks were taking European slaves. The Berber trade happened in Europe and the Mediterranean.
Okay, you're on fire. Ikeda wants to say something, then I'll go to
you. Let's keep in perspective that the crowning of African Egypt came prior to the mass Middle Passage area situation that happened. What I want to say is this. You know, for many years of my lifetime, before I become aware of the African contribution to what showed up in Kemet, as that being part of my African culture, inclusive. It's funny that, you know, when we used to watch the old movies with Boris Karloff and The Mummy, how scared we used to get when we were watching this stuff. You know, that they're taking our culture, they're bastardizing part of our culture to the point where I'm afraid of even looking at what is historically part of my culture. You know, I don't want to look at it because I'm afraid of it. And that kind of gets to the point where when we get into other individuals, we get into a situation where we have a situation where we're talking about people in Hebrew culture, people want to be Jews, you know, and I'm saying this, and what I'm saying is I'm responsible for it. It's not the necessarily the thrust of the program or program management or whoever's carrying this. But my thing is that we need to look at things logically, and I ask myself, why am I concerned about being chosen? You know, I don't have to worry about whether I'm chosen or not. I was first. If I was first, why am I worried about being chosen? Okay, because that's self-explanatory. If civilization and humanity started in Africa, then that's it already. That case is closed. I don't have to argue with you about, because your cultural situation discusses about whether you are chosen or not, because you have tried to rearrange history. Because whatever you do on that paper or your Talmud or whatever that you have, I don't need to worry about it because you weren't here before I was here.
Say it again.
Yep.
Okay? I'm original.
Thank you.
So why do I worry about whether or not you were chosen? You can be chosen all day long, but I was first. And I walk in that knowledge that I was here first. So whatever you got, you had to get from somebody because you didn't come here first. So I'm not going to worry about what you're trying to present because that doesn't have any direction on bearing in my life direction. Because I'm not going to worry about you because you came afterwards.
Yes.
So you can claim that you were first, third, whatever. But I was here. You can claim that you're chosen or whatever you're going to claim, but I was here first.
That's right.
So, we get caught up in some of these things that are inconsequential that keep us from doing what we need to be doing. And that is, we need to be collecting, organizing, researching, cross-researching, and getting everything that we have given to the world. We need to be able to take and get that back and get it back to our people so that they understand that they are second to none because they are original people. And if you are original people, then you need to clean up your house and get back to what you were doing.
Yes. Yes.
Just let me just buttress right quick.
Before you say that,
just made a very important
just a minute, Yudi, before you say anything, because I want to clarify something that Ikenna said earlier. That is the destruction of Black civilization. You were asking for the author. That was Dr. Chancellor Williams. Just to remind you.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Is there anything in particular that he said you want to share with us?
Well, you have to read, because what he does is he puts it starkly. He looks at not only the influences coming from outside of Africa that impose, he looks at those things that cause many civilizations. When you interrupt a civilization, you cause that civilization to devolve. So there were a lot of things that came into certain African civilizations, some natural, but a lot of unnatural things from foreign intervention and what have you that caused interrupted the evolution of these civilizations.
Thank you.
So we have civilizations that maybe at one time were at a very high level, but because of foreign intervention or what have you, devolve. And we have seen that happen. That has happened with many American Indian cultures, because those cultures were interfered with. I mean, look at Australia. Those cultures were interfered with, and not only some devolved to the point where they probably would have been better devolving completely to extinction, but as to where they are now. But not only were they put in a bad situation of evolution, of cultural evolution, some were eliminated completely. So, we're looking at things that we need to understand. But again, one of the issues that we have is that we have people who don't know their culture. They don't know what they gave to world civilization. If you won't speak your language in your own household to your children, then how are you going to understand what you gave to world civilization?
That's right. Yeah. Let me go to UD. I'm going to come to you for your own contribution. But Dr. Monet was next. Dr. Monet, do you have something you want to say, or should I pass on to UD?
Well, I would like to say this. It's it really hurts me what I see in our people in Africa and in the diaspora. that we feel that we're the lesser and that we're trying to totally do away with our religious practices, with our spiritual practices, who we are. And those in the diaspora, many of us do not even know the beautiful practices that their ancestors, the spirituality their ancestors came here with. We have no idea. When you talk to many African Americans, you talk to many people of the Caribbean, the only thing that they know is the Yoruba. Some people know some of the Yoruba traditions. They don't know the Igbo traditions or any of the other tribes that are there in West Africa. They have no idea what those practices were. And what they see is what Europeans have stereotyped, their perception of what we practice, which they deem as evil. So many of us are totally disconnected from who we are. And even in Africa now, and this right here, if we do not get back to our spirituality, it is so concerning to me that we will not be liberated in our mind or anything else. It's showing on the outside. We're lightening our skin. We don't want to be who we are. We're a collective of people with low self-esteem. And you can see it. It shows on the outside. And we must get back to the God and the spirituality of our ancestors. That is our power.
That's right.
And when you hear about the history of what Haiti did with their liberation, but I feel that they have been punished for that even till this day. For getting back to their spirit, through their spirituality, they were able to liberate themselves. And I believe that through our spirituality, we will be able to liberate ourselves. What is the difference between everyone want to be Native American, including Black people? We want to be everything that we're not. Everyone wants to say, "Oh, I have Native American blood in me." And what is Native Americans doing that's different from the Africans when it comes to spirituality?
Say it again.
But theirs is okay. Theirs is something that is acceptable even by Christians. So what is wrong with ours? We have bought into the lie that African spirituality is evil. We do all of these evil things. And it really, really upsets me. And then when you hear, I may go somewhere, where they have a spiritual circle or, with different cultures of people and things like that. And they'll say, "Oh, they do voodoo, that voodoo or but what are you referring to?" And I have to check them right then at the door. Wait a minute. What do you mean? Are you saying voodoo? And when you're saying that, you're not saying it as a positive, you're saying it as a negative. But then when you talk about Wicca, or you talk about which Wicca came, it was an interpretation. The person that developed Wicca was interpreting African spirituality in his own way and brought it to Europe. But then that's supposed to be okay, but then what we do is evil. Or other cultures, other spiritualities that have taken from the African, and then they want to say that this is good, but ours is bad.
Yeah.
Come on now. You're saying we are bad because we've always been bad.
Yes.
Everything that we do is bad, but then you want a piece of that. You still want a piece of it. You want a piece of that power. But the thing is, it's bad in your opinion, but the bad part and the sad part about it is we cannot even stand up as a people to check, to say, you know what? No, You're not going to talk about the religion or the gods of my ancestors. You're just not going to do it to other people outside of us, because we believe and we have bought into that who we are is evil.
It's less than. That we're less than.
Evil.
That's right. We're less than. Awesome. Excellent.
Excellent points.
Dibias Charger.
I'm just trying to buttress what Chief Ikenna said and what Dr. Simona said and what you said. I mean, there's really nothing to bring in from the outside to say, oh, here's new information, because there's not. I mean, they just kind of surmised it all. We did hit that today. But I just wanted to say a couple of things. Stephen Biko said, let me see how to put it. The greatest tool in the hands of the oppressor is what? The mind of the oppressed.
Yeah,
that's right.
They got our minds. We now justify our worth by standards that are not of our own choosing. Right? We can claim Kemetic this, we can claim that, we can go from being Christian to Jewish to Islam, back to Christian. We're just all over the place, but never settle down to our own core. Chief said it in the beginning. We are the original people.
That's right.
And if I'm original, I don't need to be chosen. Everybody else came after I did.
Yes.
God already made me the chosen one, the first.
That's right.
Everybody else is trying to be relevant. That's why they claim that they're this, they claim that they're that. I can understand that. But let's get deeper into it. Even in Igbo land, Abia State, what is our slogan? God's own state. And we're not the first community to claim that we are God's own chosen. The Jews claiming it. The Igbos in Nigeria claim that God's chosen. People make those claims just to make themselves relevant to themselves and to give them the prowess they need to defend themselves against oppression. That's all that is about. But we've taken it literally, particularly when Christianism was established after the Nicene Council and also in 378 AD. That's when they really started the mess that we see today. 378 AD. For those that support us, they shall be known as Catholic Christians. As for the others, they will suffer the consequences of our persecution, of which we shall enforce. The Pope wrote that in 378 AD. And that is the maxim and doctrine of the Catholic Church and modern-day Christianism. Go out and colonize. The Crusades. God is too weak to fight for himself or herself, whatever God means to you. So go kill for the Lord. Convert them. The way I see this whole thing, because like Chief said, we are the one and chosen. We are the first. We were here with the original people. There's a level of threat that poses to the outside world. We are the original people. Whether you talk about science, whether you're talking about spirituality, religion, math, whatever it is that you're talking about, it came out of Africa. No other human race has been treated with such disgust as the black man and woman. Not the Chinese, not the Japanese. Nobody has ever till today been treated with such disdain as the black man and woman. The good news is we're still here. Africa still has over 1 billion people in it. We're not going anywhere. We are the original people. Humanity started. Lucy, over 5 million years old. It's not a Greek. It's not a Mayan. It's not Japanese. It's not French. It's African. And there's a guy even older than that, 7 million years old, all found in Africa. I'm not saying that it is exact. There could be one that is 10 million years old. We just haven't seen the actual archaeological find yet to determine that. But we have to understand one thing. Like Chief mentioned, we are the original people. And we must justify our worth by our own standards. For those of us that are woke, Jamaican, Nigerian, whatever, you need to go to the source of the original people, like Chief said. Stop looking at ancient Egypt. It is just part of your education to understand this cauldron of human civilization.
Yes.
But Mesopotamia is old. It's an old civilization. As a matter of fact, Mesopotamia is considered older than Egypt. But who is defining you? Who is writing this story? What is the benefit of extolling one geographical area over the other? Who benefits from it? What is the purpose of it? This whole idea and discussion that we're having is really surmised in one way. Like you mentioned, okay, Dibia, written history came from oral history and the mind. And if that's the case, if civilization started in Africa, if human migration started in Africa, then it is not far-fetched for me to assume that before we ended up in Egypt, we knew who Chineke is. We knew the creator. We knew about God. It may have been oral, but from oral history, we ended up with ancient texts like Nsibidi that was destroyed by the colonial masters, Britain.
Yes. Yes. You know what? Let me just first of all thank you. I mean, my spirit has been fed today, and I hope all of you who are watching, your spirit's fed as well. There's an Igbo proverb that reminds us constantly, if we pay attention to it. Some of us do, some of us don't, but it has a very deep meaning. Onwegonye sinofene abaroka. Onwegonye sinofene abaroka. For those of you who want to learn Igbo, I will post that so that you can learn how to say it. Nobody says that her mama's or his mama's soup is rotten because you will starve to death. You eat what is presented to you by your mother to the best of her ability to feed you. When you reject it, seeking someone else's soup, you may just starve to death. This is the tragedy of the African person. Yes. We have condemned. Now, the condemnation started from someone else because before the coming of the Europeans to the shores of Africa, we were confident people. After all, how did we build civilization? We were confident. We respected and honored our traditions. But gradually, when the Bible came and the people who brought it and convinced us that our way of life is no good, we started to internalize it. Dibias, Yudi said it earlier. The most powerful tool in the hands of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. It's not about your money. It's not about your house. It's not about your wealth. It's about your mind. It's a powerful tool. I said it before. A tool is something you use to build something or to break something. And in the hands of the wrong person, your mind becomes a powerful tool. And our minds have been a tool in the hands of people who mean us no good. And when they left the shores, because of the power of the mind, when you plant something in the mind, you don't have to stand there to watch the destruction. You don't have to stay there. You walk away and watch it work, because generationally, we start to say the same thing over and over and over. This generation feeds the next one, and so on and so forth. It becomes part of us. Then we now choose not to eat our mother's soup. We say now it's rotten. African way of life is rotten. Spirituality. I'm telling you today, there are some Igbo people who will not even use the word Ise. They will say amen, but they will not say Ise. Because to them, there's something evil in that language. There are some people, Chief Ikenna said it earlier, will not teach their children Igbo because it makes them inferior. A woman just she was so proud to tell me, oh no, my son doesn't speak that thing. What thing is that? Igbo. What does he speak? He speaks English.
Chi.
Can you imagine that?
Chi.
So we've been fed over the years, but I think it's important that we understand what African spirituality is in Ghana, in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Sierra Leone, in Buganda, in wherever Africans find themselves. African spirituality is a holistic religion. It's holistic. It is about nature. It's about, I mean, the interpretations, the way the stories are told may be different based on the culture. But the one thing that permeates African spirituality, no matter where you're from, is the fact that nature must be honored. Because all that we are comes from nature. All that feeds us comes from nature. It's holistic. We don't separate nature. We don't separate our ancestors from our spirituality, because without the ancestors, we're nothing. We're here because of them. We don't separate nature because this is how God helps us. The food we eat comes from nature. The fish, the water, everything comes from nature. Then gradually we've been told to remove all of those things that connect us to Chineke, and now start embracing all these other things, creation of confusion. I'm sorry to say, my brothers and sisters, we are some confused folk. But it's never too late. If you can convince one person that he's good enough, maybe he'll convince two people, and those two will convince four. Everything, yes. Kalfani said it, yes. Everything comes from nature.
Yep.
And man has just complicated religion, spirituality. Now we're talking about which one is inferior and which one is superior. People sometimes call Chineke, give the Holy Spirit a name based on what they perceive Holy Spirit to do for them, or what blessing they receive in higher amount than anything else, on where they think the Holy Spirit is. Abasidielu. Chineke, who lives above in the universe somewhere, say Abasidielu. Or somebody called Chineke chukwu obiama, chukwu obioma. God the good, the kind. And the kinds of names that they give the Creator is based on what, even sometimes, what you want. We need to get out of the habit of looking down on who we are. See, you cannot talk about what people are doing to you when you allow it. See, I don't want to talk about what other people have done to us. They've done it. And guess what? They've left. Guess who's doing it now? Us. Us. We are our own worst enemies because we've abandoned us. We want to be fairer. We want to have good hair. We want to be thin as a rail. Black women, sorry. We're now thin people. Back then, Black women are considered voluptuous because of the kind of clothing we wear. There's nothing more outrageous than to see a very thin woman in a boo-boo. It looked like she was thrown in there. Some of their clothing is made for women with body. But now we want to starve ourselves so that we look like toothpick. Sometimes some women, when they're walking, you don't even see them. You have to look to the side to see them. Some of us are, somebody say some people, yeah, some of us are thin naturally, but you don't look down on somebody who's voluptuous. But now, that's negative. Anything that has, the lips are negative. The nose is negative. Anything that has to do with us is negative, unless they make it beautiful. People shooting up their lips to have full lips. And when you have it, it's not good enough. People braiding their hair. But when we braid it, it's not good enough. But it is not those people that are telling you that you're not good enough. That's the problem. It's that you accept it and then now you tell it to Dr. Simona. How come you're not as light as your sister? You could have been lighter. You're the dark sheep of the family. There's nothing I find more annoying than a black person saying to another black person, you're the dark sheep of the black sheep of the family. What does that mean?
Yes.
The black sheep of the family. Am I lying? Don't we say that?
You do.
As we begin the process of ending our program, I want to give each one of you the opportunity to have a parting remarks. Ikenna, we'll start with you. Please keep it brief because we only have about 10 minutes. Well, what is it? Less than 15 minutes to go.
Well, I just want to say this. I was kind of laughing as you were speaking because I was saying, I said, well, can you imagine what would happen to a dog if he went out and tried to start mewing like a cat? How long would he survive?
That's a good one.
So I mean, but like my sister was saying, we don't understand. A lot of us don't understand. Have to go back to our cultural heritage. And, unfortunately, what our young people do not do is that they do not seek out their elders and ask them questions and try to get that that history today of what used to happen. Because I remember, like when I grew up in the church is not like it was today. The church was a survival institution for Black people, where we communicated and we helped each other through our church. If you were sick, we helped you when we found out somebody was ill, or if somebody was in need of something, we came together to help that person. That's not that today. The church today, people are following these churches. You can get up and lie and steal, have an insurrection, and do whatever. And the church now don't say nothing. So do we need that as part of our spiritual development? No. We should have given that crap right back to them.
Thank you.
But again, what's important is that we need to study further and then try to reunite what we have and what we know and try to reconnect that so that those who don't know, do know, and are able to practice what they were, be more complete as to what they were and where they come from, as opposed to grabbing a hold of, especially that which is non-African, that which did not come from them.
Thank you.
And then they can't even transmit their own culture to their own children. Because like I say, if you can't teach your children to speak your language, then what are you?
That's right.
What are you as a parent?
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to Dibias Jayudi.
Earlier on, I had talked about the etymology of religion being an understanding that you are not responsible for life-sustaining forces. And so religion became automatic in you based on the fact that the air you breathe, the food you eat, the land, the waters that you fish in, you didn't create them. You ascribe it to something higher than yourself. That is relevant in all world religions. And because of this is proof of the understanding that Chineke, God, is about nature. And it is this reverence for nature, which also includes your fellow human being, right? When we talk about nature, we're just not talking about life-sustaining forces. We're also talking about your neighbor, the people that you have to interact with to be able to live in this beautiful creation that God has put forth to sustain you. So it is this understanding of nature and its importance that led to this reverence called religion, that led to religious philosophies and spirituality that created culture, political systems, economic systems, civil law, and educational systems. We need to understand that. And once we understand that, then it is easier for us to go back to our roots, to the original place, as Chief Ikenna had talked about in the beginning. We're the original people. And if we understand that, then we need to go back to the etymology, to the beginning, to where it came from. So that way we cease to justify our worth by standards that are not of our own choosing. The greatest tool in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The oppressor has our minds right now. That's why every time we want to feel relevant, we embrace someone else's culture. And usually the culture that we embrace is the culture that is responsible for enslaving Africans in the first place. We don't go embracing a Chinese culture. Chinese didn't do nothing to me. I was not taken to Africa, to Japan. We don't embrace that. We embrace those cultures that subjugated us in the first place. The Black community globally is suffering from Stockholm syndrome, and that's what we need to address.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Monet.
I would like to just tell people, I mean, I know a lot of people in Africa and the diaspora, if they're Christians or you're familiar with Christianity, there's a scripture that says, honor your father and mother in your days to be long. Well, your father and mother is Chineke. And Chineke being our father and our mother, knowing that and accepting, having the integrity to accept that our father and mother is different than that of the European, of that of traditions in other cultures. And so we must honor Chineke. We must come back to Chineke. We must respect our ancestors by coming back to the God of our ancestors. And when I say the God of our ancestors, the way that our ancestors worship, at least having a knowledge of how our ancestors looked at Chineke, how our ancestors, their spirituality and things like that. We have to honor that. That is so important. And our days will be long. And when you say our days will be long, we're saying the preservation of us as African people. We must get back to who we are. We must go back. We must find out who we are, because what we know, especially if you're a person of the diaspora, it's not who we are. That is not our original. If we've taken on those beliefs, if we've taken on the religion that is foreign to our ancestors, I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but we must know from where we came from. And we must honor that. That is so important that we honor that and know and appreciate who we are. Because from what I see is we're constantly trying to change even our physical appearance of who we are as African people. We're constantly trying to do away with something that is innate, what we came and who we came here to be. We're trying to do away with, but we must get back to who we are. You can take on, you can learn about other traditions, learn about other religions. You may have grown up in that, but we must also, it's so important to embrace who we are as African people and where we came from. And not do away with that or allow someone else to do away with that.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Oh, you guys are just wonderful. I just wanted to also let you know, as we enter Black History Month, I think it's an appropriate time that we are starting our spiritual coaching, and you're going to see that on Chiism.org. We're going to start our spiritual coaching. I think it's important because I get a lot of questions. And so it's a monthly, once a month. You have to, I'll send out the information and you have to log in for the spiritual coaching if you're interested in it. But we're going to be encouraging you on how to work with universal laws so that you can create your own abundance in this year. This 2023 cannot be the same thing. And a lot of people want to know. I'm not saying I'm perfect. We're not perfect. We don't have all the answers. But sometimes a little help, a little coaching helps you to find your greater abundance. And we also want to teach you how to conquer, how to get over this religiosity, you know, and this programming, because many of us are so programmed, and quite frankly, it's impacting how we relate, not just to us, to ourselves, but to each other, to nature. That the religious programming is so important that we come out of it. You can't stay in there and expect to bloom. Certainly not in 2023. You know, the team, our spiritual team, we are going to be talking to you in depth so that you can understand, you can go to a deeper level of understanding about spirituality. Now, somebody told me, oh, you're so lucky that you have your parents, the parents that you have, expose you to Chiism much earlier in life. And so that's practically the reason why you believe what you believe and you act the way you do. And that is true. That is true. There are so many things that we learned from that, quite frankly, impacts the way we think and the way we do things, you know. And so also we want to talk to you about where do you want to go spiritually? Where do you really want to go? Because some people come in here and what they want to do is to find out information, but they leave not quite sure, you know, what their spiritual path will be. So we want to help you talk about those kinds of things. And last but not least, we want to help you discuss some of those things that hurt, because many of us have a lot of hurt and pain in us, and we don't want to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. And we lash out and we do some crazy things that ordinarily we shouldn't do. I tell you one thing, when you're angry, you know, or when you're mad at somebody, you do some very, very bad things, you know. And I just want to use an example. If you don't come to a parent's funeral, what level of anger makes you do that? You see, or you're so mad at a child, you don't want to feed that child. You tell the child, go to bed. You know, that's the practice that some people engage in because they want to teach a child a lesson. You can't teach somebody a lesson when they're hungry. That is not a good way to do it, you know. So we need to learn what are some of the traumas that we've gone through, you know, that we need to figure out how to overcome them. Are we where we want to be in life? If we're not where we want to be, why? Why not? Sometimes you need help. I think what's wrong with the bulk of the world, if I might use that, is that we are shy, we're embarrassed, we're ashamed. We don't want anybody to know our business. Well, when you enter our spiritual coaching, nobody will know your business. It's going to be between you, me, and the other team members. What we discuss, you can pick who you want to speak with, because we're going to put that up there. You know, you can either talk to me or you can talk to the other Dibias. They'll be available to you. But besides just ChiismLive, we are going into the coaching business, so to speak, so that we can go more in depth. I want to thank all of you who are here today. Akachi, thank you for your contribution. As a matter of fact, thank you for bringing us into this, helping us, you know, or directing us to have this conversation today about Egyptian spirituality, you know, and the inferiority of other African spirituality, which is not true. So I do hope that we were able to cover some of your concerns here. I want to thank Kalfani Kwame Anu for being here. Daniel Williams, thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank let's see, Ukuna Charles is here today as well. Emeka Onyoha, thank you for being here. And there's some other people who joined on Facebook. You don't know their names, so I can't call out their names. But all of you who joined us today, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to. Thank you, Chifiken Osimiri. Thank you so much for your contribution. You really did a lot to add to the conversation today. Of course, as usual, Dibio Traja, Yudi Onyoha. What can I say about you? Thank you so much. And of course, Dr. Monet, Simona Monet. Thank you, everyone. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Make sure that you keep thinking. Yagazieno. And so it is. See you next Sunday. I will see you next Sunday. All right. Okay.